Hello and welcome to Travel Talk. I'm Mary Pat Sullivan. I'm joined today by our editorial and thought leaders from throughout the travel industry. We're going to talk about global travel trends for 2023, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with our editorial teams. So let's wrap up by talking a little bit about what the industry can improve on here with respect to things like sustainability, DEI efforts, diversity and inclusion. What's happening in the industry? What needs to happen? What steps need to be taken as we go forward here in 23? Who wants to start this conversation? Ken?
I could just start talking about sustainability. Obviously, there's a lot that still needs to happen and still to come. But last year, Virtuoso did a study, and in the survey, something like 75% of the respondents said they're willing to pay extra for a sustainable vacation. And it kind of made a big impact, I think, on people's thinking about this, in that the customer wants a sustainable vacation, a sustainable trip. So it's really the advisor's job to come and bring that to the customer, whether they ask for it or not. So in some ways, the advisors are leading the discussion instead of waiting for the customers to bring it up. And you see that in companies too. All the companies, that's the hot word this year, sustainability, and they all want to have a plan and put it into effect and want to get there first, basically, and lead instead of following.
We've seen it come in the industry before, but is it sticking? Lauren, what are you seeing?
So on the meeting side, we did a study in the summer on sustainability and whether it was a priority. Actually, we called it the slow progress of sustainability in meetings. And what we found, we asked, have sustainability measures become more important over the past 2 years for your meetings and events? And you'd think that would be like a very high number, that at least admitting it's more important. Only 59% said it was more important. And then 40%, and this is 352 meeting planners, only 40% said they will make sustainable choices only if they're cost effective. And half of the respondents said they will only do what is required of them in terms of sustainability
Half
initiatives.
said that?
Half. So, they say, I think
Right.
if anyone asks a business professional, is sustainability important? The answer is going to be yes. But when it's an anonymous survey of 352 people, and they're being honest about what they're really doing, only 30%, which actually feels high to me, say they're measuring their sustainability initiatives in some way. I doubt that.
Everybody's trying to make money again, right? And so can you make that decision based on the right thing to do versus I need to make back the money I missed?
I think what you're getting at also is there's just still a lot of confusion.
Yeah. Right.
I do feel like there's a lot of really good people working on this, really smart, really well-intentioned people. It's just a slow slog to try to move the needle.
Right.
And there's still confusion about, do carbon offsets make a difference, or carbon offsets not worth the cost? Does the sustainable aviation fuel? And so there are efforts to try to put some more standardization, some frameworks, trying to create more uniformity across some of the data that we're seeing, because consumers are confused. Even those that are really passionate, I think, about trying to do the right thing, it's not a really clear path forward for that. And then the question of who pays is a big one.
Right.
I think with sustainability, there's a lot of, you say one thing and then do another, and you hear a lot, you talk, there's just so much talk about sustainability, which is needed. We absolutely need that. But putting forth plans of action and getting things done, it's one thing to say, by 2050 we want to be, fully offset, whatever, like the airlines, or the cruise lines are building new ships to have, the LNG ships that are supposed to be more eco-friendly and all that. So we're seeing things that are, actions that are being taken, which is great, and the talking is still continuing, which is great, but let's see more of that action in place.
Can I
this
jump
year.
in for just one second?
Sure.
So, again, I always have this little different perspective because it's just a different industry, but travel managers generally do command a pretty decently large budget. So even a mid-sized travel manager is going to spend at the minimum $5 million, and a very large travel program could spend hundreds of millions for one company. So I think the influence of travel managers right now is actually so important with the with the issues that you raise, whether it is sustainability, whether it is DE&I, whether it is accessibility for individuals who may have mobility challenges but still need to travel, and I think it is a time where travel managers can play a really incredible role in changing the industry. And companies have come together to fund more SAF production, let's say this, initiate more demand for SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, which will then roll down the hill to more production. They have come together in ways that are really we really haven't seen before to forward many of these issues that are sort of top of mind across industries right now. Our RFP and sourcing processes are asking new questions about sustainability and are you meeting these thresholds and how are you reporting? They inquire about DE&I and how are you measuring that and what is it in your executive set on the supply side, how is diversity reflected in your senior most leadership? And so I think that in the travel industry, travel managers actually are holding a really interesting place right now because they can make demands on their suppliers that maybe will move the needle on some of these issues. And I really love to talk about these particular issues because there's a lot of power concentrated in our audience to make a difference in this area.
Because
So
they control the
I'm excited
money.
about
I think it's
that.
a great point.
But I'm
I love it.
also really
It's a
excited.
responsibility for them.
It is. And I'm also really excited about the travelers themselves and those who are demanding it within their own corporations, from their own companies to say, where is sustainability in my online booking tool? How do I know how sustainable my trip is going to be? What are you providing in terms of transparency on carbon emissions? And there's a lot of work being done on the corporate travel side to forward these types of initiatives. So we're really, really excited and really proud of that.
Yeah, I think we're seeing this on the sports side as well, particularly for these mega events. You take an event like the Olympic Games, where for years the International Olympic Committee would go to a city and say, we need you to build 30 new venues, to host our 2 weeks of competitions. And now you're seeing them go to a city like Los Angeles that already has everything in place, or they're using more temporary venues that can be torn down and repurposed. But they're thinking in terms of sustainability because they know even at that level, they need to be aware of this issue also when it comes to their own events that they're organizing.
And are they embracing the concept of sort of the green city structure and sort of
as green as they can for an
what-
organization that is still flying people in from around the world.
But if the employees being hired and coming into these organizations are demanding it, they're expecting it, that's that generational change that's going to keep this happening,
I
right?
think this is durable.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is we are seeing a lot of startups in this space coming up with tools and solutions that enable more climate-friendly travel and flight-free travel. So there's a lot of innovation happening in that space. The other thing I do want to just say is we have to keep in mind that when we talk about sustainability, it's not just the climate impact. There is the socioeconomic piece of it, and there is a lot of talk and work happening there to try to figure out, for example, how to help destinations better use and understand data to better disperse the benefits of travel across a destination. So, I do feel hopeful that we are moving in the right direction and that we are at maybe a bit of a tipping point here, and hopefully, all these years that you've been hearing the talk of it, maybe this will start to be the time that we see some of that change.
So I think, the points that were just made about sustainability and about that younger generation coming in and kind of changing it permanently, let's talk about that with respect to diversity and inclusion in our industry. I think we're all making efforts. We as a company have made many efforts in the last 18 months to try and change things. Obviously, we have some work to do here, guys, but the reality is that we're working on it and it's purposeful. So Ken, what do you think's happening in that arena?
Well, it's definitely something that, like you said, we're looking at as an organization, and I think the travel industry in general is starting to at least look at this, and it's an important thing to look at. It's a little discouraging when we'll report on something, let's say, and we get emails, and half the emails are saying, why are you doing this? Why bother doing this? And the other half are thanking us for doing it. So I think there's still a lot of people out there who are maybe not seeing it as important as we think it is, but I think they'll come around, and I think we just have to keep plugging away.
How about on the meeting side? What are you seeing, Lauren?
I see a lot of demand. It's not new. It's not a new concept, thankfully, especially on the destination level. The Convention and Visitor Bureaus have been very conscious of representing their entire community, and meeting and event planners are hopefully trying to make their events reflect a broader community, and to be more welcoming to all. There's, on every level, accessibility is a very big topic. Is that event accessible in every way to every person there? On the speaker side, the content side, as somebody who plans content for our events, I know that I'm very conscious of them not being all like us. And I did just go to an event where it was a panel of thought leaders, of industry CEOs, and they were all men, all, and one was not white, So it is still, it's a slow, it doesn't happen overnight. I'm glad it's happening. I did do a guide to establishing a DEI policy, and, with all the terms about sexuality, and how to be respectful of anybody's, gender identity, where you're just really thinking about how to be respectful to, a very broad-ranging attendee base, population base, and to make sure that the meeting itself and the content itself is representative, and people see themselves in the content.
I think travel as an industry, if we should be able to get it right. Right? Because the whole idea is that we're making the world a smaller place, we're bringing everybody together for whatever the purpose of travel. So we as an industry should be able to get it right if anybody can. So we got to keep asking the questions, we got to keep learning. All right, thank you for joining us. This has been Mary Pat Sullivan. I've been so grateful to have all of our editorial leaders joining us today to have this conversation. Join us again soon.